Hello, I'm Bourby Webster. I'm delighted to have you with me to discuss the fundamentals of coxing. We look at leadership, communication, and the vital role of the coxswain. I first presented this workshop very recently for Rowing Western Australia. And as I said to everybody in the room, this is my first time ever presenting to someone on the topic of coxing. I normally just do it. So please go gently on me. If there's something you don't understand or need clarification on, please reach out. I'm easy to find online. So happy to take feedback on this presentation too. A little bit about me. I started life as a rower and one day got invited into the coxswain seat by complete coincidence. And I was utterly hooked as a musician, being able to work with a crew like an elite ensemble of musicians to unify to perfection, to feel the speed of the boat seamlessly flow through absolute synchronicity was just extraordinary and something that I could control from the coxswain seat, not as an individual rower. So from that point on, that was it. I was hooked and I made that my life. I've had such a great opportunity to cox in London. I've rowed several times coxing at Henley Royal Regatta. I've been fortunate enough to win Henley Women's Regatta. I have done multiple head of the river races in London. And I think one of my proudest moments was moving to Australia in 2000 and being invited to cox the King's Cup in 2002, where we won silver just behind Victoria. And I was the first ever female in 106 years of that race to sit in that boat. So hopefully paved the way for few more female coxswains to be able to sit in men's boats and vice versa, which is fabulous. I am currently the cox of an incredible crew called the Black Swans, and we are a Masters Men's 8, and we are based out of Curtin University Boat Club in Western Australia. Today we will explore a vast number of things, but in main, what is the role of the cox? How is it done well? And why is it such an extraordinary thing and shouldn't be an afterthought, but an absolute integral part of every single rowing club and rowing crew? And why coaches, I believe, need to pay far, far, far more attention to working with coxes and making sure that the best people are sitting in that seat. So in terms of the roles of the cox, when I addressed the Rowing WA workshop, I asked for the roles of the cox, and people were great. They put forward a few things, brainstorming a few ideas, but it was really interesting that the key role of the cox, as I see it, didn't come up. There are also multiple roles depending on the situation. So here's a list, and this goes on. Trust me, there are so many different and more subtle and sort of secondary level roles of a cox, but this is what I think in the majority. So in training, steering is absolutely number one, and steering for safety. I think what we have to remember is that a vast number of crews out there, from doubles to fours, do not have coxswain. The only boat that has a coxswain is an 8, and the reason is purely because it's going so fast that an accident can happen so quickly between 3 strokes. So a bow person steering with their foot looking over their shoulder won't have enough time to make an adjustment if there's something that's cropped up. So ultimately, the only reason coxing exists is because of speed and steering. So incredibly important. We obviously give a lot of information. What's the coach wanting to do? What piece are we working on? What session are we doing? Are we in racing mode? Are we in training mode? Are we doing technical things? We amplify what the coach says. And look, that's a whole nother session, because coxswains and coaches can't hear one another most of the time. Well, the cox can hear the coach, but not vice versa. So it's very easy to have quite a lot of cacophony going on, and there's a real art to assimilating what a coach is saying and relaying it to your crew in a timely fashion, whilst also communicating what you need to communicate. We're obviously giving instruction, both to the entire crew. The whole crew needs to focus on this, but also individuals too. You're doing this, 6, you're doing that. I think we try and inspire them. Why are we even here today, guys? What are we aiming for? Well, how do we make this session count? Particularly those sessions that are just stuck in the middle of winter, miles away from a regatta, when it just feels like you're slogging it up and down the river. So really keeping them focused and inspired on a goal is critical. And we give a lot of feedback in training constantly. Not only please do this, but yes, you're doing it, and reinforcement. On the shore, we absolutely take the role of a consistent coach and provide feedback to the coach all the time. Obviously, logistics support. So often we'll get asked to help out with certain things, or planning things and scheduling things, organising things. Boat maintenance, we can often help with rigging, athlete support and mentor. So sometimes a rower can ring us and say, hey, look, I really struggled in the boat today. Can you just let me know what you think I should do differently? And that's a key part, is really being available for your crew as that person, because you see their blades, the rest of the crew don't. We also help set goals, and I often set micro goals. Obviously, the crews and the coaches and the clubs are like, right, we're going for nationals, or we're going for head of the river, or whatever it might be. But then every session, I'm like, okay, by the end of this session, let's come off the water feeling that we got this right, or whatever it might be. So we also help out with that. In a racing situation, these 4 things are the only things I think about. Number 1 is steering. Where am I? And how am I getting there safely? And am I in the right place? And do I need to steer, or can I leave the rudder? Because obviously a rudder is a handbrake. Information. Where are we? We're at 500 meters. We're rating 36. So after I've checked my steering, I'm making sure that I'm giving information that's relevant and pertinent to the race. Then I'll often relay instruction. Once I've said we're at rating 38, or we're at 250 meters and we're in 3rd place, or whatever, instruction, right, get ready for our big 500 meter push. This is what we agreed we were going to do. We're going to focus on this. But also then we provide inspiration, and it's like, guys, why are we doing this? Why are we all here? What have we done this for? And if we're going to do it, we're going to do it now. So that inspiration to say, this is it, we've got to deliver. And it's extraordinary. Most sports do not have that voice in the boat, the unifying voice that can truly, really focus 8 minds to work like an engine. 8 sets of pistons with those knees going up and down have to be driven by the one intent. So the inspiration's pretty critical. Coming on, the number 1 role of the cox is steering. No one ever told me that, by the way. My first ever coxing session was, can you just jump in because this crew needs a cox? And I was like, well, clearly I understood I was pulling on a string or a rope. But not one person said, by the way, Bourby, are you actually aware of where all the hazards are in the river? Are you aware of the river rules? Do you know why we row on this side or that side? Do you even know what side you should be rowing on? Every river I've ever gone on has just been like, go this way, then go this way. But no one has really talked me through it. And really understood. No one even explained to me how the rudder worked. No one said when I should use it or shouldn't use it. So coaches, if you're watching this, please, if you don't understand it, go and speak to an elite cox. Make sure you know it and train your coxes before they even hit the water. Steering is so vital. I can't even begin to explain how rudder technique is a thing. No one taught me mine. I just constantly feel and see what happens when I steer, when in the stroke I put the rudder on, how hard I put it on, all of those different things. But also, how soon does it take a boat to move? How long can I hold a straight line before I put the rudder on to make a corner and still make it exactly on the place of the river I want to turn? All of those things do take years of experience, but you can absolutely explain how and why they need to happen. So look, ultimately, we steer for safety. At the end of the day, nothing matters more than this. And I laboured this point in the workshop, and I will labour it again right now, because I genuinely feel this is not remotely given enough time or energy. And I've seen some awful near misses in racing, of which I might show you a couple of videos shortly, that are absolutely unacceptable. And they're unacceptable because nobody briefed the cox. And in all honesty, the cox does not even know to go, could you please give me a briefing before I go out? Because they have no clue that this is their role. So developing a culture of incredible safety and steering in your coxswains is going to elevate every single person, but also critically keep them safe. And look, there have been very few deaths, very, very few that I can find No examples online, but I've heard anecdotally. But let's not be the first one. Let's not allow some cox out of ignorance under our watch to be the first one. So I'm labouring it, but for a very good reason. So even the dictionary definition of a coxswain is the person who steers a ship's boat, a racing boat, or another boat. It doesn't say it's the inspiration person or the instruction person. The definition of this job is the person that steers. So I just really want to reinforce that. And I'd just like to sort of show what happens when you haven't explained to a cox that steering, not winning, is their primary role. What happens in a racing situation is incredibly pressured, and ultimately we are training to race. Yes, of course, there are lots of recreational crews in the world, and this is still very, very relevant for them. But generally, recreational crews out for a nice paddle are listening. Racing crews are not. They are literally machines who are trained to go from A to B, pulling hard. And they listen out for certain things a cox says, but an awful lot of things they don't. So I just want to show you a little video that reinforces this.
Pick your course! Coxing! Coxing! Pick your course! Ignition, stop rowing! Stop rowing, ignition! Stop rowing! Ignition, stop rowing! Stop! Stop rowing!
Oh my God.
Now, I find that incredibly hard to watch, and I don't know if you heard the person in the tinny, but the person in the racing boat is literally yelling, "Coxswain, check your course. Coxswain, check your course." That cox probably has never heard that, and if you ask them after the race, did you hear? No, they're just focused on winning because that's what they've been told their job is. And in a racing situation, when your heart rate is beating through the roof, and as a cox, you can't take it out on the blade and release that energy. So you're literally a simmering pressure cooker the entire time you're in that seat, trying to contain your emotions. All you are thinking about is drive, drive. And that pillar is straight ahead of her. So it's almost impossible to see. The crew are facing someone who's clearly going to be waving their arms desperately, saying stop. And you hear the guy going, "Check your course, Ignatius, stop rowing." And you can find this on YouTube literally by searching Ignatius, stop rowing. And still that happened to the point where the sixth seat got ejected and could have been really, really badly injured. If those riggers pierced the boat and pierced the person, it could have been so much worse. As it is, there's a considerable amount of damage there. But there is so much to unpack in that tiny clip. In terms of the failures, the cox is not looking ahead or is even aware of what's ahead. Now, I find that gobsmacking. If I'm going to go out on any rowing course, the first thing I do is study every Google map, every aerial, whatever, to find out where spit posts are. And yes, every river will have a map marking where spit posts are. There's no way I want to go training without knowing where some of the big hazards are on a river. I don't think that cox thought about that. That cox just thought, my job is to go racing. So rule number one. Rule number two, if you're going past a marina, there are always massive hazards to guide boats in and out of marinas. So huge warning. That cox should not have been sitting there yelling at her crew to pull harder in finishes. That cox should have been eyes out the boat, looking around, seeing in advance, particularly next to a marina. And also never ever race on a stretch of water that you haven't rowed over. My God, that would... I don't know what I'd do if someone said, please race a stretch of water that you've never rowed over. I would literally be leaning out the boat the whole time to see and probably not making any other calls than steering. So point number two, the stroke is not seeing or heeding the coaching boat at all. The stroke is literally seeing the coach flapping and they're still in racing mode. So what you have to remember is rowers cannot be relied upon to tell you what's going on. They are absolutely focused on dealing with pain. So we need to be aware of these things and understand that, they're not going to just tell me if there's something coming up behind me. They don't. The cox is too focused on the crew, not listening to the crew, and is not being aware of the surroundings first before everything else. The entire environment isn't safe, as I say, the marina. So all the warning signals are there. Like as soon as I start coxing anywhere near or around boats or boating or pontoons or something, my heart is going through my roof going, where are the obstacles? Where are the hazards? And the fact the cox wasn't clear on where the hazards were before setting out is just unforgivable. No one should have put that cox on that water not knowing that pylon was there. So here's a question for you. This is my crew in training a few weeks ago, just as winter was turning into spring. We actually have some sun on the Swan River. And I just want to ask you, what do you think's ahead of me? So you can see how the rowers are blinding a complete section of river from me. So my question is, what is ahead of me right now? And I can confidently tell you, nothing. Because I would never, ever point a boat at a hazard or go out on a river if I wasn't completely sure there was nothing there. And trust me, rowing in the dark is the most terrifying thing, and we often are off the water in Western Australia before the sky has broken. And my heart is in my mouth for the entire session because I feel blind. I know where all the markers are, but sometimes they're very hard to see. So other than the fact I'm leaning a lot, which impacts the boys' training, which obviously I try and communicate, but also sometimes your eyes play tricks on you and you see something on the water and you think it's a barrel or something that's, bucket or something that's floating on the surface that could really damage the boat that is just there, that's not normally there. And it's just so bad. But on a day like that with the sun shining, I will absolutely already, before going in a straight line, when I'm turning a corner, I've already mapped out what's ahead of me. So when I'm on that straight line, I know there is zero infringements. Absolutely critical. There's no excuse for ever rowing straight towards something. So a few things I believe we should know about steering and safety. You must always be looking 50 metres ahead. Always, as pretty much as far as the eye can see, but also left and right, because if you then start turning left and then going on a straight line, you've already clocked everything in that space ahead of you. It is your job to assess conditions for safety. So the coach can be whatever. The coach is staring at the crew. The coach isn't looking ahead. It's literally just you. I promise you, coaches are staring at athletes a lot of the time, so they're not even keeping their eyes out. And I'm not sure how many coaches go, actually, my primary role is also safety. So it really is, coxswains, you must take ownership of safety and make sure that you've spoken to your coaches and your crews about this, and make sure you prioritise it at the start of every session and think about it. So for example, there was one morning we were setting off from the club and my stroke man was like, you do realise that you're actually pointing north? And I was like, I am. And I turned around and I could see that I'd left the club at a weird angle. I had thought I'd gone off completely straight. I had a stronger side, I won't mention which was the stronger side, that had already started pulling me round. I thought I was heading straight. At that point, I was like, guys, we're 22 strokes into this session. We're going home. There is no way. I literally am blind. I refuse to take your boat at this speed blind. This is insanity. So yeah, I ruined a training session. Everyone got out of bed at 4:30 in the morning for no reason. I will not cox in fog. I will not cox when I'm unsafe. It's my responsibility. So make it yours. Lights on the boat. Again, if the crew someone forgets, you've got to make sure it is your safety. I promise you, coxswains, you've just got to prioritise it. So with no coach, stop if there's a tiny concern about anything in the water. And I regularly train with my crew with no one out there with me. So I am sort of coaching from the coxing seat. And there is absolutely no shame in getting your girls to hold it up hard in the middle of an open, clear river because you thought something was in the way. Do it. Who cares if 1 3-minute piece on one day in 1 year had to just come to a stop? It might do in the race. Great training. So you must come first, and your gut instincts are right. Be safe rather than being sorry. I'd rather stop and come to a grinding halt 3 times for no reason because I thought something was in the water than smash up 8, 9 of us and destroy a huge amount of equipment or worse. So that is definitely the way to do it. Never cox on a stretch that you don't know without a coach first time and you can't get any intel on. Things can be buried even when you can't see them. You just need intel. You need people to go, don't go close to that bank, it's shallow or whatever. Just never do it. Never do it. Rowers are such optimists. They want to get out there. They want to row. Don't do it if you don't have any intel. And if you're ever worried, you stop, whether racing or training or anything. And even before my recent race, and I've just come back from the Head of the Charles, my message to the crew, the last thing I said before was like, what is the instruction that you guys know that means stop instantly? And by the way, they won't. It will take at least 5 strokes to stop because their brains are like, hang on, we're racing. Why is she saying stop? But we're racing. But literally. So that was the last thing I put in their minds, that, you know, is it hold it up? Is it check the boat? And we all agreed it's check the boat. So I'm like, that's the only thing I need you guys to know, is if I say check, we check.
And wind it down, wind it down. Wind it down. And easy there, easy there. 7s, hold it up. 7, hold it up. 7 only. Heads! Look! Look! Ah, shit.
Excuse the swearing.
Jackson! Very good. About pair.
Now, I cannot believe no one was hurt. As I said, we've been very lucky in our sport. The cox is telling his crew to wind down. You can hear him go, wind down, wind down. He still feels they're not listening to him. Twice he turns around and sees that crew and just doesn't even clock them. I can't begin to tell you, when your mind is in racing mode, to switch it into doing something else mode, it's not a human thing. Our brains don't work like that. We don't respond. Even the rowers, no one in that crew sitting there, the crew that we're watching close up, is screaming to the other crew. Why not? Because their brain is still in racing mode. That's what happens to rowers. That's what happens when we're in fight or flight and competition mode. They are literally looking at that crew going, oh, there's a crew. There is no registering. For God's sake, they've got to stop. They're going to row into us. The coxswain rowing that crew, she has 2 crews at an angle, or he has 2 crews at an angle in front of them. 2 crews, not even in the blind spot. They're literally at an angle, which means that they're highly visible to that cox. I would hope that cox is saying, okay, we've got to stop. But do you see the crew are not taking 1 stroke off? That crew row at full pressure into them. So again, either the cox's brain is going, I clocked it, I can see it, I'm still rowing towards it, but I've just got to work out what's going on. Hang on a minute, and by which time she's already on top or he's already on top. Or the cox is yelling, stop, just like the coach was, Ignatius, stop rowing, and the crew cannot respond because their minds are in racing gear. So coxswains, you have to work out how to get around that problem. You have to get around that problem that you need to stop like a handbrake, and yet the engine will not put the brake pedal on for 5, 6, 7, 8 strokes. So I actually think you should train at that. You should, like I did, try and make that the last thing you talk about before you go racing. So it's like, are you with me? Are you going to do this? I need you to understand that when I give you that word, you will stop. Anyway, safety recap. I know I've really harped on about all of this, but my goodness me, it could not be more fundamental, and it will release your success. Once you've got on top of all of that, then you can get on with all the fun things that you think are the great stuff about coxing, the inspiration, the motivation, the technical, the getting that crew to be like a Ferrari engine. So safety recap, the reason that we do steering and the reason we have coxswains, because there are lives at stake in an 8. It travels very fast, men and women. The cox must be empowered to be in control at all times. Crews, never. The minute you get in the water, even with a novice cox, what they say goes. Even novice coxes are intelligent human beings that understand when danger is present and can communicate that danger. If you are not listening as a crew and haven't empowered the cox and don't believe in them, then you're in big trouble. So they will step up. I promise you, if you put trust and faith in people, they step up. So even the wrong call can be the right one if everyone is listening and responds together. So coaches must leave room for the cox to get the boat safe before anything else is discussed and practiced. And often I've had a coach go, right, can we work on this? And I'm going to go, excuse me, sorry, I just need to get a few strokes over here because I'm going to drift into the bank. Don't just sit there thinking, oh, the coach is talking, but I'm drifting. No, you literally are the most in control of everyone in that squad training. You must be coached as a cox to understand how to make decisions that impact safety of the crew and make the right choices, which actually includes not winning at all costs. It includes not winning at all costs, because trust me, lives, even an Olympic final, are more important than winning at all costs. So safety and steering must be discussed every session between the coach and the cox and the crew, and they do need reminding to listen as if their lives depend on it, which they do. Anyway, so I'll just put that steering to bed, but if I've done one thing, if you're still listening, that means that you've really taken it on board, and you will now prioritize it, and you will now make it something that is on your mind every single minute of every single situation when you're with a boat. So thank you for indulging me and hearing me out on all of that. So look, steering. This is always your priority because, as I say, that's the only real reason we're in the boat. The fact we can do some other things as well is fantastic, but the reason it was created as a cox in the first place is steering. So a few things to remember about steering. Guess what? Your crew is rowing backwards. What a weird sport, hey? You are their eyes for everything. Plus, you're the only one with a cox box, which reports all of the critical info, where they are on the river, what rate they're doing, what speed they're going, what stuff is happening around them. So without your information, they're technically and literally blind. So understand how that must feel and how you'd like to know how and where you're going. So suddenly you're rowing along on a beautiful, calm, open river and you feel the rudder go on and you suddenly start turning. If I was rowing, I'd be starting to panic going, there must be a massive hazard. Why isn't something being said? And then I'd start not thinking about my rowing and. So if you don't communicate all of the information while you're steering for any arbitrary reason, guys, there's a wind gust, I'm just going to take us nearer the bank. If you just take them nearer the bank, there will be an element of insecurity and panic and them not rowing well and upsetting the boat for a considerable amount of time when you didn't need to. So you must communicate your steering, which sounds bizarre. I'm going to steer and I'm going to steer to stroke side, and then you do it. But they need that because otherwise they'll be like, what's happening? Why are we steering? And I generally tell them why. Always tell them why, actually. Your stroke is your rear view mirror and often your pace setter. Well, and of course your pace setter. So communicate frequently. And I actually do say, is everything clear behind? Can I go? Blah, blah, blah. So you can, when you're not in a racing mode, when your stroke becomes blind because they're just a rhythm machine, you can definitely communicate and ask about that. So apparently I'm wrong on this. An elite men's 8 can't travel at 45 kilometres an hour, which is what I was always told. The fact is a men's 8, open elite men's 8, is travelling fast enough to water ski behind, whatever speed that is. So a late decision is beyond fatal. That is an insane amount of momentum and heavy weight in a tiny, tiny shell. There are no seatbelts, there are no airbags, they're not designed to crumple like cars, there's no roll cages. In fact, it's quite crazy that we do this sport going backwards, but we do, and that's why the cox has to steer brilliantly. So a boat is a long, thin knife with a tiny rudder. Steering takes ages and there are no brake pedals in this boat. So just keep that in mind when you're in an 8 at all times. So look, the fundamentals of steering, often it can be really weird for a novice cox. And the reason why is because we all learn to cycle. And so when we want to go left, we push the right hand forward. That is the absolute opposite to coxing. So often you'll see novice coxswains, they're in a straight line and then they suddenly steer the wrong way and then they oversteer, and it's because their brain is not computing because they're so ingrained with how to steer on a bicycle. So left hand forward means you move left. And again, no one told me that before I got in the boat. So not being funny, coaches tell your novice coxes every session before you go out. If you're going down a straight bit and there's steering coming up, just remind them, if you want to go right, push your right hand forward, and definitely push, not pull. So always keep 2 hands on the rope in an 8. You've got no bearing as to where you're at if you actually haven't got tension in both hands. A rudder is a brake. It impacts speed and balance. So don't just think, oh, I could steer a bit here, steer a bit there. You don't want to steer unless you absolutely have to. And I really work hard to have the lightest touch on that rudder. I'll explain just quickly. To move away, you need to move nearer first. And forgive me, I don't have a whiteboard to explain this to those of you watching the video, but ultimately an 8 going along with a rudder underneath. That 8, if you're rowing next to another crew, is going to move towards that crew before it can move away from that crew because of how the rudder works. So as soon as I put a rudder on, this end of the boat swings round. So if I'm racing next to a crew and I'm told to move away, if I'm already close to them, I'm literally going to clash before I move. So unless I can touch the rudder unbelievably lightly, but even then I'm still going to nudge towards them. So when you're asking crews to separate, don't leave it late. Don't let them come close together and then ask them to separate, because I can guarantee, particularly with a less experienced cox, you will create a huge collision trying to get them apart. Certainly ask one crew to move, not both. Don't say crews separate. Pick a crew that's more out of line and ask them to move, because 2 crews coming together are going to hit even faster. So your rudder isn't the only option for steering. Remember, asking one crew to chip the catches in a little quicker will nudge the bow around in the direction that you need to go. Asking for one side to row harder. So just remember that you're responsible for the safety of the boat, and if putting the rudder on is going to cause a collision, use some other options. Generally, I only move the rudder 1 centimetre, maximum whenever I'm steering straight. I literally can see if I'm drifting and I will move. If I don't need to put the rudder on at all, and I've drifted lanes before now when racing over buoys because I don't want to touch the rudder, and if the lane next to me is empty, I will quite happily just very slightly drift into a different lane and sit over the buoys rather than continually steering and fighting wind or a different strength of my crew. I try and avoid the rudder in lane racing completely, and I nudge it early to stay central. So tiny nudges. If I feel I've got to do more steering than that, I try and avoid steering, and if that means getting close to the buoys, I tell my crew. I think clipping a buoy slows you down far less than having a rudder, a brake under the boat continuously pulling against the water. That's my preference, and you'll work it out as you develop as a coxswain. But needless to say, it's incredibly light touch. The other thing just to say about push and pull, the rudder is behind you, and so pulling against that is where you get all of the sensitivity. If you're pulling the rope towards you around the pulleys in front of you, which is stretchy and gives, I feel that you don't understand the tension on the rudder at all. So coxswains, I hook my little fingers over the side of the boat so I can constantly feel the friction of how far I'm moving the rope, and I have my hands on the back of the knots or the buttons or whatever you've got as your holding points on that rope, and I push my hands forward, and then I push against that resistance to steer, tiny bit forward on the right, tiny bit forward on the left. Again, we all have different preferences, but I cannot understand why you would pull to steer. That to me would not give me enough sensitivity and would be too big a margin for error, and I would tip the boat. Steering massively can impact balance. So look, there's just a picture of 2 8s, and I in the workshop drew a graphic of actually how those 8s move towards each other in order to steer apart. So one thing I was never told was that size matters. So I took my crew to the head of the Yarra in Melbourne. And yes, we got to row over the river. I'd already studied where pylons and bridges were and what arches I should go through. Didn't remotely occur to me that with such a windy river, I needed a completely different rudder. I've never had a different rudder. No one's ever spoken to me about rudders. I didn't even know there were different rudders, sizes or shapes or anything. And to be fair, I think my crew have raced in a straight line so much for most of their careers that none of them mentioned it either, so I don't think they know. So head racing is a completely different kettle of fish when you're going around a curvy course and need to corner. I wasn't able to practice the big bend, as it's known, on the Yarra at speed, because every time I tried to go around it, and when you're racing, there's only racing in one direction. So, of course, you can cut the corner, which is how you have to get around it. But in training, you've got crews coming the other way. It was the busiest river. We literally could manage half pressure rating 18 if we were lucky. So I had no idea what it was going to be like throwing a heavyweight men's 8 at an extremely sharp corner. I already knew it was going to be hard to get round, but I was like, we're just going to have to try. And we didn't make it round. We crashed into the bank. It was extremely frustrating. It was only at the end of the regatta that we stopped, and you can see 3 red circles here. And I'm just going to reiterate this one here. See that tiny credit card size one? That was our rudder. The rudder size that we should have had was something more like this down the bottom, which you can see Stu's got his hand on, probably just to draw attention to the fact that it's actually 3 credit cards, so literally 3 times the size. The rudder to the right is more like the rudder we used for racing recently for the Head of the Charles, which does corner better, where the rudder is actually all of the length of the fin. And the impact that has, like rudders have come a long way, is such a smooth steer. So for those of you that know how a boat feels to steer, 4 or an 8, I'm just going to show you a video of Harvard on the Head of the Charles last year, using that rudder that's on that yellow boat as opposed to the credit card little separate rudder that I used for the Head of the Yarra. So take a look at this for a corner. That to me is quite extraordinary. I don't think I've ever seen a boat turn that sharply, and I didn't even know that boats could. So, and as I say, I've been coxing a very long time. So size matters. There are different sizes. For goodness sake, have a conversation with your coach about whatever race you're doing to make sure you're racing with the correct rudder, because safety and results are at stake if you don't. So coming on to communication. Oh my goodness. You can hear as a cox we talk all the time. Well, not all the time, but we're talking a lot, and we have a lot to communicate. It is quite different in racing versus training. But one of the best examples, and look, this has now gone viral and been heard all over the world, is Harry Brightmore from the UK winning Olympic gold with the British men's 8 at the last Olympics. And I do want you to just take your time to listen to this. And I want you to pay attention to 3 things. The timing, so how often he's speaking, when he's speaking, and you can hear the rhythm of the catch and finish of the crew. You can hear that catch finish noise in the shell. What tone he's using. And how he's literally bringing the whole thing together, and how does he do that? How does he bring the crew together? So listen out for those 3 things as we listen through. It is obviously 5.5 minutes, still blistering. If you listen to the splits that are being called, I can't quite believe that people sit there holding 118s. But anyway, what a crew. That's Olympic level for you now. So just to have a listen and maybe write down some things. If you've got a pen and paper or a phone, you can take some notes handy as to just what you observe, because this is kind of textbook good. Okay, so this is Harry Brightmore coxing the men's Olympic final. So have a listen and make sure you take some notes on this.
Traction. Hands moving. Good. Legs down. That's a good start. 45. Very good start. Trust our rhythm now. Good. 111. Really nice, boys. 27 seconds. High, efficient power strokes. Ready? Go. High, efficient power strokes. Volume's coming up. Sitting up. Level with Dutch and USA. 40 on rate. 45 seconds. Good rhythm. Now I want you getting the hands clear. 40. 55 seconds. Rhythm. 2, 1, go. Push, hands. Trust the rhythm. Trust the rhythm. Yeah, that's good. Now I want long strokes. We're on 38.5. 1 minute 15. Long hanging strokes. Through 500 now. 118. Push. Move the hands. Right. On 1 minute 30, I want us completing our strokes and moving the hands. Ready? Go. Dutcher in second. Complete the strokes, move the hands. I'm on the 4th seat of USA. Level seats with the Dutch. Charlie out long, we're on 121s. Believe that we're good on this pace. That's 1 minute 50. Keep completing our strokes. Level with the Dutch. Good. We're coming on a 750, 159, legs and hips, ready, go. The next 500 is going to win this race. Legs down and move the hands. Long hang. Still level seats on the Dutch. Trust it. Trust it. Legs, hips. Legs, hips. Good rhythm. Listen, boys. We're about to come through halfway, and I want you sitting tall and being long. We're now starting to move into the lead. This third 500 is going to count for double. Charlie, Diggers, we're on the K. Start getting to work now. Legs down. Legs down. It's 40 seconds and we're in the tears. Legs down. Legs down. One seat up on the Dutch. Good in rhythm. Keep the length. Keep coming out long. Right. Morgan, Jacob, long suspension. Ready. Go. Good. Listen. We're on 1150, nearly 1200 meters. 3 seats up on the Dutch. On the tiers, I want you very focused. Very awake. Get ready. Volume's coming up again. Tier 1. Now, GB. Legs down. Legs down. We're moving away from the USA. I want you to just keep shoveling down on them. Get to f***ing war. Rory, Sholto, out f***ing long. Get f***ing long. Good. Right, boys. We're sitting on 121. We can boost this speed. We can f***ing shovel. 600 meters out. The USA are about to go. I want you to kill them in your foot plates. Now! Legs! Get ready. The next minute is going to win this race. Tier 2. Go! Move! Long strokes! Move! I'm sitting on the 2 seat of USA. This is the minute. This is the minute. Get moving now, Charlie! In and on! Yes! The USA are moving into second. That's your target. That's your line of sight. Boys, we have got 50 seconds left of this row, and then you are done. We're on 121s. We are at 40. We can go again. Tier 3. Sets of 5 on the legs. Now you're inside 250. Legs down. Legs down. Legs down. Dutch are moving. Do not stop. Eyes in and shovel. Boys, 150 meters. 41, 120 on the speed. Get shoveling. 40, dog, 100 meters. Next 5, hips open. Now. Legs hips. Legs hips. Legs hips. Boys, 5 to the line. Go. 2 more. Go through. Yeah!
I love the little yeah on the finish line. What an incredible race. So look, we were working in groups during the workshop and discussing what works, what he's saying, when he's saying, how he's saying it, and what did we learn. So what did we learn? He starts so calm. He's literally, I cannot begin to tell you how he must be feeling. It's an Olympic final. He's like, good, clean, rating. That's not what's going on inside. My God, there's fireworks happening in there. That is restraint, to be clinical, to just let them explode out of the blocks, find their rhythm, is really, really exemplary. And trust me, I know, because I know how I feel in races, and I just want to go ah the whole time because I'm excited and I'm full of adrenaline. But to learn that restraint is extraordinary. When he makes the calls matters, both in terms of where in the race, so he's like, we're at 500 meters, volume up. So what he's saying is, I'm turning the volume up on the Cox box because we're going to build the intensity as the race goes on. But also where in the strokes, sometimes he's calling it on the finish, sometimes he's waiting until halfway through the recovery to make the impact. So what he says, the tone of how he says it is incredible. And then everything they do is together. The crew absolutely trusts him, and they're literally just listening and going. They know the race plan. They're waiting for his call. And trust me, his calls are changing, I'm sure, from the exact race plan. He's responding to the Dutch and the US, particularly when he says, this next 500, we have to go. So he's literally saying, we've started to move, but if we don't keep moving, we're not going to win. So you could say he makes or breaks that race, which is how important it is to get this communication right. So they respond, it's synchronized, and you can just hear that the boat is not ever anything but rhythmic. So if you can get them doing things together, every call together, every technical thing together. One of the things I love, though, is that he calls out names. Charlie, Diggers, let's go. And he's calling things in those pairs, not saying it's a push for them or whatever. He's just saying, I'm with you. You're human. We're people. We're a crew. We've done this. So one of the things I love is that he uses we. Because often I hear coxes going, you guys need to do this. All right, you're doing this. You're late on your catches. What's the you? We. If they're late on their catches, it's because you haven't called them together or trained them together. So take responsibility. We have to do this. We have to get our catches better. So it's just a vocabulary to learn. And trust me, I still have to catch myself doing it. So it's a never-ending learning journey, this coxing business. One of the things I really find that you can hear from Harry is that his authority comes through trust and not volume. He uses the volume very strategically and even says, the volume's coming up, which I think they know is as a, this is another move marker. You know, it's telling them you're churning through this race, you're getting through it. So coxing is not a conversation. It's clear instructions and commands. So I'm not good at this because I'm a chatterbox. I keep trying every session. Every word must serve a purpose and be brief. So you're trying not to have a conversation. You're trying to give just very clear instructions that they can understand. Every crew is different. So you grow a language together. And I say to my crew, what's worked today? And thankfully, my crew are awesome. They give me direct feedback. I take that on board straight away. Only thing will be is just to make sure that it needs to be from your crew, because if all of you 8 of your crew go, well, I need this and I need that. And we did have a moment before the race we've just done in the US where one was like, well, I really like this call, and someone's like, I really don't like that call. When it happens like that, you get a crew consensus, and there are going to be some calls that some of your crew don't like, but if it works for the crew, they're going to go, but if everybody needs this other than me, I'll learn to deal with it. So you do grow a language together. You need to understand rowing technique deeply enough so your calls are respected, because clearly, you know, if you're telling everybody that they're rowing long and everyone's feeling it really short, they're going to be like, we really need a length call right now. And she's telling us, yeah, guys, great, you're rowing long. So you've got to understand and be good enough at technique. And that takes years. I am still learning so much about what a boat takes to move, and it's microscopic refinements. There's 1,000 people that work for every Formula One team trying to get that car incrementally better. So the body language off the water and tone on the water can change the entire dynamic of a session or race. So you need to be incredibly mindful. If you've had a really crap night's sleep and a really stressful day at school or work or whatever in your life, and you come down and it's all over your body language and face, trust me, the first stroke is not going to be balanced. It's unbelievable how crews pick up on you. You're the voice. You're the one who's talking to them. So you just have to give 100% every session, more than the rowers. They can go and thrash out a whole bunch of different stuff on the river. As a cox, you're the unifying voice, and they have to come together in the right headspace and frame of mind. So be decisive. Once a call is made, own it. Sometimes I've made a call and I'm like, oh no, that's just made them hit it even harder and we're wobbling even more. But you work on that and you literally like bring it together, keep working together. So own the calls that you make and then move on if you need to. I try to never shout. And in fact, my poor crew recently in a head race, because I'm yelling, get out of my way and yield to other crews, I can feel them tense up. I'm not yelling at them, I'm yelling at other crews, but it's like when you get an email in capitals, rowers will tense up when you shout. So I don't think there's any place for shouting. Even Harry, at the end, he's like, come on, but he's still, this is what we're doing, we're going to do it in 5s. He's still communicating just at an intensity. So the whole yelling at your crew, they can't hear you. It's just a wall of sound. You've got to keep that communication crisp and clear. Yes, in the last 500 metres, you're stepping it up, but I think tone and not volume is absolutely critical. So some rules that I have for myself, and goodness me, do I always do them? No. Do I always try to do them? Absolutely. So the only banter is 1 or 2 lines at the start of a session. I generally will have a bit of a joke about we're cruising at altitude and strap in and make sure your tray tables are stowed or whatever it might be before the session starts, making jokes about my strokeman's socks. Once I start that session, I really am 100% into rowing. I don't really talk about anything else, certainly not what I did last night. So the moment we start, we're in rowing mode, and that is in the middle of a training session, miles out from a race, because we're there to improve, and to improve, it's incremental, just like a Formula One team. 1,000 people trying to shave milliseconds off a car. They're all working on trying to get that time literally split seconds better, and that's what we're doing too. I literally try to never say, what are we doing when we're on the water? It's always on the bank. Guys, what's the session plan? What do we want to achieve today? What's the outing? So I've mapped it in my head. I've got the overall arc. So I'm not just kind of winging it once I'm on the water. So try and make all of that happen on the bank. Set the intention, set the plan. I want one thing to be better at the end of the session than the start, and I generally try and communicate that to the crew. We've been working on finishes, or let's just get that timing, or let's just do whatever it is. And even if there isn't a general consensus, I know when I start the session what feels the worst, that I want to make the best by the end of that session, so I can come off feeling like I've made a difference. I cover the mic when speaking to the stroke or the coach as often as I can, because one-sided conversations, everyone in the boat can hear you, but they can't hear what my stroke man is saying to me in return. It's not okay. It's actually a bit frustrating. So wherever possible, I'm like, hey, do you really want to do this again? Or should we have a bit of a longer break? Or whatever it might be, my thumb is over that microphone. Any suggestions that happen during the session, unless it obviously needs to happen, you know, hey, Borbs, we really got to get this going. Brilliant. I car park and then discuss at the end of the session, because particularly if it's shifting away from what we set the focus, just because one person in the boat feels the need to work on something, the rest of the crew are off focusing on something else, and we can't just continually limp along trying to always change the session or always try and work something out. So one rower's needs may not be another's, so I try not to impose one person's suggestion on the crew unless I feel the whole crew would benefit. And I'm continually leaving anything personal on the bank. Every session is upbeat, focused and firing. And trust me, there have been some sessions where, you know, I've really been dealing with something and I'm really not in the mind frame, and I really don't even want to be there. But if I'm going to be there, it's got to count. And I switch my mind and I'm like, we're on. Let's go, guys. You have to be. So a quick discussion on timing. Crews take 3 strokes to get your head around what you're asking. So you can't just be rowing on and go firm pressure, go. And they're like, what now? The next one? Like, what? What did she just say? It never works. So preparation, my brain is 5-8 strokes ahead of everything all the time. So you have to give them time. And even when you're preparing to row, you can go all 8 at the finish. You can't then just say go. I can guarantee you someone's going, Bob's not ready. Rowers, love them. They just take time. So you've got to allow that space and time to get 8 people in the mindset, listening. Have I got you? Are we ready? Go. It's not just what you can see. There's a brain time as well as a physical time. So short strokes and high rates mean you need way more preparation time because things are happening so fast. So my rule is generally I say what I'm going to say, then when I'm going to ask for it, and then I ask. So guys, I'm going to need much more length. We're going to be doing it in 3 strokes, in 2, ready, go. So I've said what, I've said when it's going to happen, and then I actually give the command. Go or now are the only 2 words I ever use. So if they're thinking, am I supposed to be doing this? If you haven't heard a go or you haven't heard a now, we're not doing it. Starting a technical exercise when the rudder on is not good practice. So I'm often like, guys, just going to get 10 strokes to the rudders off, then we do this. Because otherwise you're just failing the training. It doesn't work with the rudder on. How you start sets the tone. So often like, guys, all 8 forward. Are you ready? Go. The first finish collapses and one side is on the water. Stop. We can get that first finish better than that. All 8 forward again. Support your first finish. Go. I'm not going to row off in a scrappy heap. Never. So be disciplined. Stop. If it's not right, start again. Don't just keep trundling on. I always call pressure on or after finishes and blade work on catches. So that's something you really, really need to think about when you're out there. But they need time to prepare. So it's firm pressure, go, get ready, firm pressure on the catch. So firm pressure, go on the finish, get ready, on the catch. But if I'm sort of saying, I want blade work, so it's square blades, are you ready? Go, and they come out square. That takes a lot of time to think about and work, but just remember, pressure is called around the finish. Anything to do with blade work is called around the catches. And I'm always using 3, 2, 1, go. I can use in 1, go if they're rowing at a very low rate and they're very in tune with me. But in general, I still try and give at least 3 strokes. I'd love to bring you back to an orchestra. I was a musician at uni, and I said at the very top that the reason I fell in love with coxing is just because of the sheer joy of synchronicity and that unbelievably highly tuned. And trust me, people think they're rowing together when they're not. They're really, really not. Together is an entirely different level of rowing. And trust me, when you feel it, it's extraordinary. And we only hit it in patches. We have yet to get that crew. It's a lifetime of getting a crew to really row together, which is why crews jumping in at the last minute don't work. Doesn't matter how good you are at rowing, it's together. So with an orchestra, it only starts when a conductor beats, which is exactly the same as when a cox makes a call. The way a conductor does the upbeat dictates the attack, the speed, and the personality of the first note. So if a conductor wants an orchestra to explode with a bang in a Mahler symphony, they're like, and it all comes from that bit before that bit. So the orchestra watch this and then they go. If I want an orchestra to play beautifully and gently, it's a small movement with a flowing hand. So your voice is that equivalent. But if you want them to relax and row long, you can change your voice tone, guys. We're going to take it off lovely and smooth. You can drop your voice, change the tone, and they then will match that physically. It's just a human trait. They won't row sharp and sticky and spiky if your voice is long and loose. They just won't. It's just so innately in a human to copy. If we see someone moving smoothly and fluidly, we move smoothly and fluidly with them. Can't help it. Which is why orchestras literally are reading the body language of the conductor for every nuance, every tone, every mood. And we wouldn't get goosebumps listening to music if they didn't. You're not going to get an 8 or a 4 singing at high speed with absolute amazing flow and precision if they don't do it in the same mood and feeling together. So rowing needs the same approach. Musicians practice scales and arpeggios, they don't practice pieces, and yet so often rowers just go out there and bang up and down and practice pieces. I really believe in drills every session, chunking it down, working on that catch over and over to get the muscle memory. You never hear a violinist play a wrong note. I have never been to a concert and heard a professional musician play a wrong note in a concert, and yet regularly I've felt rowers take a duff stroke in a race. Why? Because we're just not practicing in the same way. There's a saying in music that you don't practice until you get something right. We say that you practice until you cannot get it wrong. And only then, when you've got that unconscious competence, when you don't even need to think about how or why you're playing, it's just flowing out of you, that's when you hit the sweet spot. And so, I aspire to do that with a crew one day, where one day we don't just keep practicing to get something right. We literally are so well trained and practiced and drilled that we just can't get it wrong. There is not one bad stroke. I think that's what wins Olympic gold. So look, the next part of the workshop that we did was on the ergs. I don't think I'm able to do this with you, but if you're able to work with a coach or a cox as a mentor to say what you do, say why you're doing it, prepare and execute, and work with some rowers with a coach on the bank, because the coach can't hear you in the boat. So we worked on a few things. I talked about mid-session working on timing. I said what we're going to do. Okay, crew, we're going to work on our catch timing for the next few kilometres, really get that catches right. Some of us are rushing the slides, so we're diving into the front end, not getting that timing. We need to really control it forward. And the coach will have been saying something like, guys, you're rushing into the catch. So I'm saying what we're going to be working on. What? Then I say how we're going to do it. So let's take it off steady state, 80% pressure, full slide rowing. We're going to go take it off 1920-ish, nice and lively. That's how we're going to do it. And then I'm basically reinforced, we're working on timing, so the first finish must be together, guys. Make sure you want to move together off backstops for the second stroke, not rushing it. I want you all keeping your heads equidistant from the rower in front and controlling the slide, moving exactly with the rower in front. So I've given them not just I need to move better into the front, but how. Keep your nose the same distance from the man's back of the head in front or the girl's back of the head in front. Make sure you're controlling the slide forward. So all 8 come forward, wait until they do, give them time, set, and then row. So if the first finish isn't together, we stop and do it together. If I feel someone rush into the catch, if that first catch isn't together, we start it again. So we jumped on the ergo. I had different groups. One was doing a warm-up, just starting hands-only rowing, and someone was coxing them through it. And we changed pairs all the time. Someone was doing 10 strokes at 24, 5 strokes at 18. And how do you make those calls? When do you make the calls? What can you do to bring the rate down 6 pips as instantly as possible? You've got to get them doing it within 1 stroke. How are you going to get them doing that? What do you say before? And then exercise 3 was 2 strokes at full slide and 1 stroke at quarter slide. And that's quite a shock, doing a quarter slide stroke in the middle of rowing. So you've got to prepare them, get them listening, make sure they know what they're doing, and then ask them to do it. So I was really chuffed at the groups that did that, and watching rowers cox other rowers to get this right, I think really helped them understand all about the timing, the tone, explaining what you're doing, explaining how you're going to do it, and then calling it. So before I ran the workshop, I was sent some questions, which I gave quick fire answers to. So there was guidance on the relationship between the cox and stroke. It's one of absolute respect and trust. I absolutely respect any stroke man sitting in front of me. I listen to them. I ask them for input. It's a two-way street. We work together to make the session a success. So regular communication, but put your hand over the microphone. Check things with them. Check before the session, but then verify during the session. If something hasn't gone quite right, feel free going, this isn't working. What do you think we should do? But make sure it's not a one-way conversation with the rest of the crew. Cover the microphone. How to call a warm-up training and row. We went through that with the short slide work. How to coach a beginner coxswain on the bank at an ergo and teach them safety first. All the things that I've done in this session today. Someone had asked about projecting a voice, working with strong personalities when they disagree with the cox. It's all about agreeing as a crew that we've got to help the cox. If we don't feel comfortable with them or confident, we shouldn't be going out with them. We should already have briefed them and worked with them on ergos first. Let them call, 4 of us working in a 4, sitting in an ergo, cox making some calls, and then empower them. Say you're good, give them feedback, give them a really good stroke to give them feedback. You don't have people disagreeing with a cox out on the river. Absolutely horrific. You'll ruin the cox's confidence when they could be a fantastic cox. Just don't do it. How to give helpful direction from the cox seat to novices. The what, then the how, then the do it. And someone wanted to improve coxing skills in a recreational content. So I hope a lot of what I covered did that because of safety, synchronicity, communication, tone. I finished the session talking about the cox as a leader. I really feel that coxing has provided me with the most extraordinary skill set. I get to work with people that blow my mind from their commitment, their dedication, how hard they're willing to push themselves. You can never just turn up on the day and win a race. So the amount of training and dedication and discipline, the respect I have for that is immense. And so to be able to lead that crew and bring them together and add something to something that's already so extraordinary means that I've really had to work on a whole bunch of skills. So I see the cox as the most extraordinary leader that you will either already have some of these skills which you can develop, or it will develop them in you. Your self-awareness, you debrief honestly your own mistakes, you create a crew culture by modelling behaviours. Guys, I don't think I did that well. What's the feedback I want? And so they start going, well, actually, could you give me some feedback? So we all have a culture of improvement and discipline and that 1%. Decision making, I have to think fast and clearly. I have to read conditions. I have to read my opponents. I have to understand what my own crew's thinking. I have to know what decision is the right one. Do I talk to them first about their technique? Do I shout at that other crew? Do I steer? What happens first? So it's about making decisions all the time, making them fast and making them decisively. Empathy and connection, like understanding my crew, listening to the coach, my boat, just all the time. What can we do? What do we need? So Vision and standards. I have this vision that I want to win everything I do, and I set that mind really early on about if we're going to do this, what do we need to do? So what numbers do we need to hit? What splits do we need to be doing? We link our drills to race goals. We knew that we were going to have to be racing hard off the front at the head of the Charles recently, doing a 1,500 metres. So we were training pieces that were stepping rate changes, being able to change speed because we knew we were navigating crews. We were going off 25th. That's not a smooth straight race. That's rate changing all the time. So I only accept excellence, and I know that that's what they want too. So I raise standards by setting expectations on punctuality, precision, commitment. Hope I've never been late to a session. Only slept in once in the last 4 years. Terrible when your alarm doesn't go off. Someone turned the volume down. Probably me for a meeting. Didn't turn it back up again. It happens. Own it. Never do it again. Resilience and reflection. Responding to failures. Every outing is data. So we sometimes don't have a great session, but I never write that off. I'm like, why? What's it telling me? What do we need to do differently? But also servant leadership. What does my crew need now? How can I make every rower feel essential? How do I understand that I'm the facilitator, but I don't have a blade in my hand? I cannot win a race. I need 8 people to do that for me. So the Cox is the most extraordinary leader. So how do you get there, particularly if you're a novice Cox? Use your life skills. We're humans. We're constantly negotiating relationships, situations. We're driving cars. We're making decisions all the time. So if you don't know how to do something, say, it's totally cool to go, yes, I've been coxing for years, but by the way, do we need a different rudder for this race? Yes, you might look dumb. Be dumb, because it might mean you win. Ask for clarification up front before you get on the water for everything you can. Ask for one thing to work on as a crew in the session. Like, guys, what do you want me to work on, and what do you want to work on? Ask questions of the coach when you stop, not the rowers. Remember, one person's opinion is just that one opinion. Generally, I'll go, is there any feedback from the crew? But if there was a coach there, I wouldn't be asking that. The coach would be having that conversation. So as a crew, they're only going to do what the coach says. So you need to make sure that you've got one focus for everybody. I try and ask for feedback at the end of every session, not in the middle. We can't unpack something then. That's a waste of everyone's time. Coxes record. I recorded several sessions before I went to head of the Charles, just to go, am I talking too much? Are my commands clear? Did I get the timing of that right? And watch and listen online. There's a lot of amazing Coxes. So, and you can ask Coxes to record sessions with particular focuses. But the racing ones online are really, really helpful. But if you want to get better in training, there aren't many sessions in training that Coxes have recorded. So maybe ask someone to do that for you. Just a few elephants in the room to finish off. The smallest person doesn't always have to be the Cox. Find someone who is a gifted communicator, positive and passionate. I believe they will make a boat go faster. I was not a small person. I was a rower. I am not a small person. I really love it, and I'm committed to making every boat I go in as fast as it possibly can. So find the people that can do that, not just the small person. Coaches don't seem to coach Coxes, so they don't improve, so they don't stay coxing. In life, we just like to know that we're progressing and enjoying something, and mastery. Mastery is extraordinary. So if the Cox is just sitting there every session and you're not helping them, my God, no wonder we're losing potentially amazing people. So coach them every session, listen to their recordings, ask them to record, actually understand what they're doing and saying. No coach has ever asked me, except recently, thank you if you know who you are, could they listen to my recording? Mind blown. Been coxing for 30 years and it took until 3 weeks ago to be asked if they could listen to my recording. I was like, wow, they're interested? It would have been brilliant. That was the one session I didn't record. Bugger. Anyway, weight matters, but only when your crew is really elite. In my view, for everyone else, great coxing matters way more. So for those coxers who are skipping breakfast and for God's sake, work out your calls, worry about your tone, think about your leadership. That is going to matter so much more to you than whether you've had breakfast. So the difference is 1 second for 10 kilos in a straight line race. So when your boat's 700 kilos, a few kilos for someone light spread over that way is just not worth it. So please don't just keep picking the small person. Pick the right person. A summary: coxing is the most extraordinary role in sport. There is no other sport that is taking essentially a motivator on board with you. Formula One has a race engineer that can speak to them, but they're not in the car. I'm in the boat. Learning to cox well impacts your entire life for the better. I hope I'm vastly better at interacting with the world around me because of it. Safety is the most important reason for having a cox, so coaching coxes on safety as a primary role is key and never diminished. Steering is a huge part of safety, so always focus on that first. Understand there are different rudders for different situations, and steering is more complex than you think, so teach it. Communication is utterly key. In training, commands require real thought and practice. When you say something is as important as what you say and how you say it. And information is key. Rowers are moving backwards. You are their eyesight. So to close out, a cox is a leader. We enable crews to excel, and done well, we will transform rowing in Western Australia. Full stop. We will step up and actually have the same level of skill as our rowers. So let's work together to make our city a centre of excellence for coxing in Australia. Thank you very much for listening.